Dan, thank you very much. I am delighted and honored that you all, the Neeley series, that you all would think enough of me to extend an invitation for me to come and to be with you this morning and to share with you some of my thoughts and ideas and opinions and on what's going on around the country. And as Dan mentioned, I am on the board at Burlington Northern Santa Fe, so I'm in this area probably about, seems once a month, but at least once a quarter. And because of my BNSF responsibilities, and we've got some of the BNSF family that's here this morning, and good to see all of you all. I am delighted to be back, and Tom Hahn, who works with me over at BNSF, Tom started working on me probably 6-8 months ago about this breakfast, and Dan would call, and we finally all got it squared away for me to do it today. I asked Tom Hahn, I called him about a week ago, and I said, Tom, he was an audience. I said, what do I talk about? He said, talk about 25 minutes and sit down. So, I will honor that. I don't know, Dan, do we take questions? Should I leave time for questions?
At the end?
Yes. Okay, good deal. Well, I, again, am delighted to be with you, and you would think as it turned out, I built some things around my BNSF board responsibilities and was able to, during this trip, to be able to get several birds with one stone. You would think, if you look at my schedule over the next 3 days, that I was running for something in Texas, because I'm here in Fort Worth for a couple of days, and tomorrow night I'm down in Marble Falls doing an event. Then I'm in Houston on Friday, and then I'm back home over the weekend. Then I leave Sunday night to do a prayer breakfast in Illinois on Monday, and we'll be in Illinois for a couple of days. I'm also in the process of raising a private equity fund, and limited partners kind of do to you what the political process does to you. It kind of reduces you to becoming a beggar. So I'm begging for about $150 million right now, so that's keeping me on the road quite a bit. So I saw Drew with Dillard's, one of my Dillard's board members that was here this morning as well. So, but anyway, thank you very much for having me and allowing me to come by and say hello to you this morning, and again kind of share some of my thoughts with you. You know, this political process, or this political cycle actually, could I get some water? This political cycle actually has been pretty, thank you, Dan, has been pretty interesting, because a year ago, if you would have looked at the Republican and the Democrat candidates, the field on both sides, and you would have said a year ago, okay, which one of these candidates are going to be on April 23rd, you'll be able to say they've raised the most money, they draw the largest, which one will raise the most money, which one will draw the largest crowds, which ones will be the better communicator, the better candidate, which one would have brought more new voters to the table. Who would that be? You surely, I don't think anyone in this room would have said that it would have been Senator Barack Obama. So I think it's fair to say that he has really turned the political arena on its head. Democrats are obviously struggling, trying to figure out how to deal with him. In spite of last night, I do think that he still wins the nomination on the Democrat side. I don't think that Senator Clinton, I think last night's win gives her some short-term momentum, but in the long run, I still think you can put a fork in her, she's done. So it's going to be tougher her to overcome that. And on the Republican side, you can see the Democrat leadership or the Democrat establishments having a very difficult time dealing with Barack Obama. How do we stop this momentum? I do think that he's got such a special sauce. I do think that it's even going to be more challenging for Republicans to figure out how to deal with him. I do think that John McCain, and I said this a year ago, I said John McCain does give Republicans the best chance to win. John McCain is somewhat of a maverick, and it's been interesting for me to just, you know, I'm no longer on the front line in politics. I don't have a vote. And I remember here about 3 or 4 months ago when they were talking to President Bush about his last State of the Union address, and he was commenting about that, and he was saying, you know, the great thing next year is, you know, I'm going to be at my ranch looking at this on C-SPAN, and I don't have to do this. And you know, for me, the last 5 years, I've been able to sit back and kind of analyze and for CNN and for, you know, talking head shows and radio shows and, you know, the commentary that I do, the op-ed pieces that I do about twice a month for Stevens Media, I've been able to sit back and kind of write thoughts and ideas and opinions about all of this, and it has just been plumb fascinating observing as an outsider for the last not quite an outsider, but as someone that doesn't have a vote for the last 5 years. And what I have observed is that, and by the way, I think I've learned more in the last 5 years that I've been out about politics than I ever did when I was actually in the fray, because I think sometimes you get your nose to the grindstone and you just focus every day on certain responsibilities, certain bills, certain things, you know, and you just, it's not easy or it's not difficult to lose sight of the big picture. And so the last 5 years I've been able to take a deep breath and take a step back, and I need to turn my microphone on. Test 1, 2. Okay. I've been, the last 5 years, I've been able to take a step back and look at the system, look at Republican Democrats and write about it and talk about it. And this year, you always, in politics, you want to kind of reduce your talking points and the processes. You want to reduce them to the level that people, when you're talking about it on the 10 o'clock news or you're talking about it in town meetings, that you take it out of the policy discussion, the CBO or the GAO kind of terminology, and put it in John and Sally Doe terminology that people can understand it. And so you kind of like the buzzwords and the phraseology and the terminology that can kind of get people to hone in on what you're talking about or what you're doing, hopefully. Well, in this election cycle, it's been change. That's kind of been the buzzword, change. And every candidate, CNN did an event, or they did a little feature story with Jenny Most, that she was talking about how many times each candidate, Republican and Democrat, talked about change in their speeches or in the debates that they were having. And it was just phenomenal how much people talked about change. But what they failed to say is this. And if you get nothing else out of anything that I say this morning, I hope you'll remember this. Real change requires real change. It does. You know, and everybody talks about change, but nobody wants to go through the painful ordeal or the painful processes that we have to go through in order to change. When my mother died, my mother was diabetic. My father had heart disease. The doctor told me about 7, 8 years ago, he said, we were talking about this, and I was in Florida raising political money from a couple of heart doctors, talking to him about contributing and so forth and so on. And we got to talking about health care. I told him some of the challenges that I had in my family, and he said to me, I said, my mother was diabetic, my father had heart disease. He said to me, he said, JC, you got the gene. He said, you can either make it better or you can make it worse. He said, you make it better in terms of cardiovascular or the heart. He said, you make it better by what you eat, what you drink, and exercise. He said, you make it worse by what you eat and what you drink and no exercise. Now, I had heard all of that all of my life, been an athlete. I knew about running. I knew about eating right. I knew all those things. I just ignored it. When I was in his office, at that day, I'll never forget, I was about 228 pounds. And he said to me, he said, JC, in order for you not to be impacted by that gene, or in order for you to manage that gene, you've got to make some changes. I knew that. And I tell you what, but for some reason, that day, he got my attention. He got my attention to the point that I almost left his office jogging, but I didn't. In order for there to be real change, there has to be real change. And I said, I'm going to lose this additional weight. I'm going to start paying attention to what I eat. I am a big dessert eater. I love dessert. One of the top 5 things for me to do before I die is to go to cheesecake and eat one of every flavor before I die. I'm going to do that. But you know what? I've got to manage that if I'm going to do that. In order for me to lose weight, I had to make some real changes. In order for me to get my test labs where I wanted them to be, I had to make some real changes. We all want change, but we don't want the responsibilities that it takes to create real change. We all like miracles, but we don't want to be in a shape that we need them. We love miracles. We love to talk about it, but we don't want to be in a position that we need them. Much the same with change. I'm fascinated. And let me tell you, friends, we have an appropriation system in Washington. It's not designed to save money. It's designed to spend money. We've got a health care system in America that we should not call it health care. We should call it sick care. We've got a health care system designed around sickness, not around wellness. We will never deal with health care until we talk about health. If you ate that bacon and if you ate those sausage, don't take the elevator. You need to take the stairs when you get to the office. Real change requires real change. And we don't like that. We become creatures of habit. We don't like change. You know, government is a process that we like doing the same old thing, the same old way, and we kind of dress it up around the edges and we change the terminology, but when you peel the onion one layer, you say, we're doing it the same way today as we did it 30 years ago. One of the things that I've learned in my entrepreneurial life and been on corporate boards is in the private sector business always look for ways to be more efficient, to be more productive, to be more profitable. You show me one thing that the federal government has done over the last 25, 30 years, that we've become more efficient, more productive. Everything that the federal government has gotten its hands on, we are twice as bad today as we were 30 years ago. Public housing is worse today than it was 30 years ago in spite of the fact that we need it. Public education is worse today than it was 30 years ago. The most critical tool that we can give our kids to compete in the global marketplace is worse today than it was 30 years ago. 1.2 million students are going to drop out of school this year. Most of them from underserved communities. Healthcare is worse today than it was 30 years ago. And if you think healthcare is expensive today, you wait till we get it free. And you see how much it's going to cost us then. But it's worse today than it was 30 years ago. Retirement systems, worse today than it was 30 years ago. And one of the reasons is we have no competition in government. Burlington Northern Santa Fe has to get up every single day of their life trying to figure out how to get coal from point A to point B. And they have to figure it out in a way that they say we do it better than the competition. And you know what holds them accountable? Not the board. We have some responsibility there. But you know who holds them accountable? Union Pacific, CSX. You know who holds McDonald's? Have you ever noticed this? Anytime you go in McDonald's, and I've got 5 kids and I got 5 grandkids, I spend a lot of time in McDonald's. And you know what I notice about McDonald's? I don't care how busy they are, I never spend more than 7 to 10 minutes in the line waiting on my order. Can you say that about the post office? Can you say that about Veterans Affairs? Can you say that about the IRS? Have you ever tried to call a government agency and try to get a response from a human as opposed to a machine? Friends, we are fortunate to live in a country that we have a $3 trillion per year budget. That speaks to the fact that we live in a great nation. But also it speaks to the fact that we've got a bureaucracy in America that hinders progress because we've got a $3 trillion federal budget. The left hand often doesn't know what the right hand is doing. We're very duplicative in many of the things that we do. We've got to look at our models. We've got to look at the way we deliver healthcare and the way we deliver education, and we've got to look at ways we deliver retirement in America, how we create retirement systems in America. We never want to look at those things, but yet we talk about change. We've got a retirement system that if you're 45, 48 years older, 50 years older, you're going to be fine in Social Security. The retirement students the students at TCU that's in grad school is about to write their last tuition check. You won't receive a dime out of the current Social Security system. I've been paying into the Social Security system since junior high, working at JM's Cafe. I'm not going to get anything out of it. It's going to be broke by the time I'm 65. It's going to be paying out more money than it's taking in. And when I'm 65 and by the time I'm 70, it's going to be totally bankrupt. It'll be totally bankrupt. Real change requires real change. We don't want to change the system. George Bush talked about changing Social Security, trying to fix Social Security. He had Republicans and Democrats had him on their wall throwing darts at him every weekend. They thought he was a bad guy because he said it's going broke. We need to fix it. They didn't want to go through the pain of doing it. We are going to be totally bankrupt in our Social Security system in the next 25 years. Next 25 years. 1.2 million students dropping out of school every year in the United States of America. We're number 23 out of the top 27 industrialized nations in America in terms of math and science. 23 out of 27. And you go in and you try to create change in public education, and let me tell you something, friends, nobody wants that. Now, I'm a radical advocate to say that I believe that poor people ought to be able to take scholarships and send their kids to private schools. They ought to be able to take public money and send their kids to private schools. I've gotten beaten up over that. I've been called ugly names over that. I even had one lady say to me, one member of Congress, she said to me, she said, I don't believe that poor people should be able to live in public housing and send their kids to private school. I said, no, wait a minute, let me figure this out. Let me make sure I'm understanding this. Presidents can live in public housing and send their kids to private school, but poor people can't. But poor people can't. Go figure. The most valuable tool that we can give any kid in Fort Worth, in Eufaula, Oklahoma, where I'm from, the most valuable tool we can give them is an education that will teach them how to read, write, do the arithmetic, learn the computer skills necessary to compete in a global marketplace. Friends, we have no shot of leveling the playing field if we have some kids that can do it and some kids that can't. And you know who the kids are that get hurt in that process? They're usually poor black kids, poor Hispanic kids, poor white kids. We have gotten to the point as Republicans and Democrats, we want to protect our deal. We want to protect our deal. We don't want what's right for the system. We want to protect our deal, or we want to protect our party to the detriment of poor kids, kids who need education, who are suffering because of education, a lack of education. So we've got to look at our models. We've got to figure out, you know, I'm a big advocate, and make no bones about it, I'm a big advocate to say, and I see Dee here, and Dee and I have had some of these conversations. I'm a big advocate, Dee Jennings, to say, you know who the largest employer of black people is in Chicago? Black people. Because when you have small white business, small black business, small Hispanic business, small business, when you help them grow and create jobs and create profit, you know what they do? They employ people. And I know this is going to shock and amaze some of you guys. I just mentioned that word that you should never mention in a public forum, profit. You should never talk about profit. I have been in some business or another for the last 25, since I left the University of Oklahoma. I have never gone into business to create a job. I go into business to create a profit. If I create a profit, there will be a job. If there's no profit, there won't be a job. Profit should not be a bad word to us. I want my investors to know that I am driven by creating wealth in my private equity firm. I want them to know that. I'm not embarrassed by that. I'm not ashamed of that. I know the better I can do in my business, the more I can help my church. I am a tither. I believe in that. The more I can help my church, the more I can help the Boy Scouts, the more I can help Africa, the more I can do the things that I think are important in terms of philanthropy and community service. Friends, profit shouldn't be a bad word to us. That's a good thing. When you come to church, Grace Covenant Church, on Sunday mornings, and you see that big old nice pretty building that we just built last August, and you see all the pews and all the sound system and all the lights, you think my pastor doesn't get up and applaud every Sunday, come tithing and offerings? Man, he's a happy camper. Because of profits. Nothing wrong with that. We've got to look at the systems. We've got to look at the models that we use. And I think when you look at the models that we've used over the last 30 years, I think you can take a good idea, you can get a good idea of where it all leads, where it's going to lead over the next 25, 30 years by looking at what has happened in Europe because of the European elite. And I don't say Europeans, I say the European elite. And the European elite, because there's many Europeans, they agree with us on many, many issues. But when you look at the last 25, 30 years at what they've established in Europe, the European elite, they have established what I call graceful decay. Let me tell you how they did it. They said, we're going to raise taxes and cut benefits on an annual basis. We're going to remove God from, sorry, I shouldn't. We're going to remove God from the public square. Now that is offensive to say God in Washington, D.C. Say, oh, don't talk about God, that's politically incorrect. But look at what has happened in Europe. They removed God from the public square. The more we allow God to be removed from the public square, the more we weaken the fabric of the United States of America. Secondly, raise taxes, cut benefits. And thirdly, don't defend yourself in time of war. That's exactly how the European elite has established graceful decay over the last 25, 30 years. Remove God from the public square, raise taxes, cut benefits, don't defend yourself in time of war. Friends, we all can have our opinions, and we live in a country that we can have our opinions on God and war and taxes and everything else. But let me tell you something concerning war. I don't know who the next president's going to be, but I can surely tell you this. When evil people say they will do evil things to the United States of America, we better have somebody in the White House that will take them seriously. George Bush, we disagree with him. I disagree with him. I've told his people, I've had my conversations with him. I'm thankful that I live in a nation that I can disagree with my president. But I tell you one thing he has done, and he has done pretty well. He has taken seriously evil people saying they will do evil things to the United States of America. And we have not been attacked since September 11th, 2001. We've not been hit since September 11th, 2001. We foiled many attempts because he has gotten up every single day being vigilant about taking his responsibility to secure the American people seriously. You don't get up and say things about a guy that's got 30% approval ratings. You don't say nice things about him. But I tell you what, he's done a doggone good job in that area. And the next president, I don't care if it's Republican or Democrat, they, in spite of the fact that they don't want to admit it, they too are going to be wartime presidents. And they're going to have to get up every single day trying to figure out how to protect the American people. Friends, if we can't go to high school football games, if we can't go to TCU football games, if we can't go to football stadiums, and we can't go to shopping malls, and we can't get on airplanes, it doesn't matter what the tax rate is. We're going to be afraid to leave our homes. It doesn't matter what the healthcare system is. Security, liberty, security, that makes it all work. That gives us competition. It allows competition to grow and to nourish and to be encouraged. But again, real change requires real change. As I close, I want to leave you with this, and be careful that the Baptist isn't coming out in me here. I'm going to look at my... But before I close, just let me ask you to consider something. I read a book by a buddy of mine. Tom Brokaw wrote a book called The Greatest Generation. And that World War II generation they were a fascinating bunch. that World War II generation, they gave us the safest, the healthiest, freest, most prosperous nation in the world. And that World War II generation, there was just a character about them that they just did it. Long before Nike came along with that slogan, I mean, those guys lived it. That generation, they just did it. And that World War II generation, I've thought quite a lot about them in the last 4 or 5 years. That I've gotten an opportunity to spend time with my kids and my grandkids. I think about what kind of an America do I want my grandkids to inherit. And I surely want them to inherit a safe, a prosperous, a healthy, a free America. And there is an ideology in America. There's two thought processes in America. One that says that we are just a normal nation. We should not think that we're better than anybody else, or we should not think that we're, any more than anybody else. And then there is a thought that says, we are America. We are America. Normal and America. And as I have spent time with my grandkids and got to go for the first time, and every grandparent needs to experience this, go to see your grandson's eyes the first time he meets Minnie and Mickey Mouse. That is just pretty doggone special. And you experience those things and you start asking yourself the question, what are you doing to make us the safest, the healthiest, the freest, most prosperous nation in the world to sustain that? And it always evolves to normal or America. I don't want my kids or my grandkids to inherit a normal country. I want them to inherit America. The country that we have, that we can be critical of our government. They couldn't do that in Iraq. That a kid from Eufaula, Oklahoma could run for Congress and by golly, he won, and walk the halls of that Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass and Thomas Jefferson, that they, at a point in time in their career, they walked some of those same halls. Men and women that I've studied about in history books. I met Rosa Parks. Boy, you think it isn't tough when Rosa Parks calls and says, don't leave Congress, need to stay? Man, that's almost like your mother calling. I've got to meet some of those people. I have made friends and established friends on the Republican and the Democrat side over the last 15, 20 years of my life that are real friendships. They're not political friendships. And I have been reminded through all of my political life, or surely over the last 5 years, of the things that really add wealth and riches to our lives. Friends, it's not our business. Our business is important. It's not our business. It's not the car that I drive. It's not the home that I live in. It's not my little cow calf operation producing a few more calves. The thing that adds real wealth and real riches in your life and in mine, it's family and it's friends. And we have created such a culture in America. Real change requires real change. But we have created such a culture in America that we usually work family in on the weekends. We usually work friends in, once a month at a ball game. And then even when we're with friends, I started using a BlackBerry 2 months ago. And my partner told me, he said, it will become Crackberry. And even when we're with our friends and we're with our family, we're scrolling on that BlackBerry, trying to get the latest data, the latest information, or the latest statistics. We're driving with our spouse to the mall or driving with our kids to the ball game, and we're talking on the cell phone. Friends, if we want to put more value on family and friends and relationships, if we want government to be better, we want health care to be better, we want education to be better, we want retirement systems to be better, real change requires real change. World War II generation gave us a pretty good model. I hope you'll take Tom Brokaw's book and take a peek at it and just remind yourself of what they gave us. And they were pretty good models to look to. So with that, thank you again for letting me come, and I'll take some questions if there are any. Yes, sir.
You've been on the inside, you're watching elections, you're commenting on them all the time. Is it really possible to make a real change in view of what's going on with Republicans and the fact everybody's trying to protect their turf? Is it really possible to make the change we're hearing about?
I think there will be real change, but I think when you peel that onion, you ask yourself, well, okay, what is the change? Is it going from people having more money to save for education and to to tithe to their church or their synagogue or their parish, or is it having less money? Is it becoming a protectionist nation and saying that we should not have trading partners? Or making it more difficult to get American products and services into other markets. Protectionism is kind of like steroids. It makes you look good in the short run, but it kills you in the long run. And to say that we can only survive in America by marketing or selling to American citizens, which is only about 8–10% of the global marketplace, is extremely, extremely short-sighted. We've got 90% of the marketplace outside of the United States of America. We can't survive. So I think there will be change, but is it a good change? And I think where Republicans missed it over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I think our arrogance just ate our lunch. I don't care if it's politics, if it is the church, if it is in business. I don't care what arena you're in. When quarterback, when ego and power mesh, that is a very, very, very dangerous thing. And ego and power they didn't just, kiss. Kiss on the cheek. With us, they were kissing in the mouth and necking and hickeys and a whole night. Our arrogance just ate our lunch, but anyway. What kind of change? And I'm all for change, but I don't see any change that's been proposed at this point that would encourage me to believe that it's not going to be anything more than protecting my deal. Now, Republicans do it in protecting the chamber crowd, Democrats do it in protecting, the labor crowd. And even with that, I was forced to belong to the Players Association when I was in Canadian Football League. But and I had my fights with the association. But you really can't have management without labor. You can have labor without management. There has to be some meshing there somewhere along the way. But, politics says protect my labor deal or my tax deal. And I do think Barack, Senator Obama, I really feel like he does have a demeanor that I think he wants. I really think he wants to change the demeanor of Washington. I think he's naive to think that it will happen, because you look at the support group that he's got around him. You look at the support group that John McCain has around him, and John just picked this up. When John was in the grave, throwing the dirt off of him and saying, "Hey, I'm still alive." I don't know. You didn't see any of those people around him. And now that he's a front runner, I think he's got a lot of the same arrogance surrounding him that President Bush surrounded him. And President Bush is a good man. He's a decent guy. But I just tell you, I think his lieutenants failed him terribly bad because of the arrogance. But anyway, I can ramble on about that. But yes, sir. Then we'll go ahead.
On the subject of change in policies, where do you see environmental policies playing out? How do you see that playing out in the policy realm over the next few years?
Climate change is kind of the political term that everybody's heading toward, that everybody's talking about. And I do think there's going to be a climate change bill in the next administration, because every candidate that's left standing today, they all are on record supporting climate change. I can give you my thoughts on that. I've not had a lot of conversation with John and Barack on this, and Senator Clinton would never invite me to dinner, but I do, in terms of climate change. I'm not so sure that I'm where Al Gore is in thinking that the earth is melting, but I am with Al Gore in terms of conserving, and I've picked up my conservation ways not from Republican or Democrats, but if you grew up in my neighborhood, you just knew you didn't leave a light on if you were not in that room. You didn't, if you drove by the Watts household, as a matter of fact, if you drove by any house in my neighborhood at night, you might see what little light you saw, it was a light from the TV. And maybe mom or dad would have something they needed to read. You turn the lamp on to read it, and then that lamp was gone. My grandmother bought a little clock, about a 2x2 clock that had a light on it. Her electricity bill went up $2. She swore it was that clock that did it. She unplugged it. That generation just conserved. We were a very conservation conscious community. Now, we didn't know that somebody was going to come up with something called climate change, but you go back to my neighborhood, we look and say, we were doing that 30 years ago. That's nothing new to us. My grandmother used to say, before we had running water, they would, indoor plumbing, they would put this water, heat this water, and put it in a tub, and everybody would take a bath, and then afterwards, grandmother would take the dirty water and want to put it on in the garden, and we'd say, "Grandma, that dirty water on the garden?" She said, "It's going in the dirt." Duh, common sense. She says, "Yes, dirty water, but it's going in the dirt." So they didn't waste. Even the bath water went to good use. You didn't waste it. So I do think we should be, we shouldn't be wasteful. We should be thoughtful in terms of conserving our resources. I'm just not comfortable in saying that there are conclusive models out there that would prove some of the theories that we've seen come down the pike. But I do believe we will see a climate change bill of some sort, regardless of who the next president is. Yes, sir.
First of all, thank you for your service to our country. Even this morning, you're serving your country by speaking. We appreciate that a great deal. From what I've read about you and what I hear you say a little bit, I know you must be a man of strong faith. And yet, to be in the political world is a world of give and take, of negotiations, of concession. How does one wrestle with a strong faith? And that would imply, in my mind, you don't give on certain issues, and yet you serve your country in a political sense, where the whole world is concession.
Well, and I don't think I have, but I'm going to be transparent with you here, and I hope you pray a lot in the political process, and sometimes my prayers were, dear God, how can I punch him in the mouth and not impact my witness? Or how can I choke her and not impact my witness? Never figured out a way to do it, however. I do think that I was talking to a fellow by the name of Wes Watkins, who was part of the Oklahoma delegation, and Wes literally went from being a Democrat in Oklahoma, in the 3rd District of Oklahoma, which is considered yellow dog Democrat country, and Wes went from won that district as a Democrat, carried it as an independent candidate running for governor, and then won a congressional seat in that district as a Republican. And I was talking to Wes about 6 months ago, and he said, we were talking about the political process and how disillusioned we were. And he said to me, when I first ran for Congress in 1978, he said, I didn't have consultants, I didn't have posters, I didn't have any of that. And he said, but when I left, I was having to raise $1 million every election cycle because we wanted to have posters and campaign staff and all that kind of stuff. And he went on to say, he said that, he reminded me, he said, politics it's become a process of saying that if I'm running against you and you're favorable, the people in Fort Worth say that, 60% approval, 12% disapproval. Well, the system is designed to say, I've got to knock his approval numbers down for me to have a chance. And man, given unto himself, man will always do what's best for man. And if you and I are competing and it's about me getting ahead, and if there's no conscience, politics seems to have no conscience these days. We will say whatever we have to say, we will do whatever we have to do to protect our deal. And we have consultants and posters that tells us how to say it and how to do it and how to beat him up and how to beat her up or drive her negatives down or drive her negatives up, her positives down. It's an ugly, ugly process. And that's what politics, that's the way you win elections these days. And I think as a person of faith, I think you understand when you go into the process. When I first got into politics in 1991, when I first ran, I had people that asked, my consultants, they asked me, they said, are you prepared to go negative? And I had no clue the depth of that statement, what she was actually asking me. And I said, well, I'm prepared to defend myself. I hope I can get, set the record straight, and I hope people know me well enough. But politics, that's what politics is. And I think there are certain issues, and I have no problem in compromising, but there are certain issues that I am prepared to lose on. And I don't think any Republican or Democrat in the 4th District of Oklahoma, in the state of Oklahoma, that ever voted on me or cast a vote on me, for me or against me, that they didn't know exactly where I stood on any economic, any social, any foreign policy issue out there. And now, could I run for national office? I probably couldn't. Because, you know, people don't want the truth. They want you to tell them what they want to hear, not what they need to hear. And John McCain, I think one of the challenges John has had when you've heard, and again, sitting back watching this on TV and, you know, just kind of eating my popcorn and Coke, watching this entertainment on TV and trying to figure out how I can sell popcorn and Coke to the rest of the nation during this process, because it's going to be really, really entertaining. I'm sitting back and I'm hearing these people calling John a maverick, calling him too independent. That's code for we can't tell him what to do. That's what that means in politics. We can't tell him what to do. So, no, I understand the give and take. But there are certain issues that I would not be prepared to give on or to take on, and I would be prepared to lose on those issues. And I'm also one final thought one final thought on that. I've also concluded that I don't have to be an elected official to serve. I think housewives serve every day, school teachers serve every day, the business community serve in their respective roles, journalists serve. I don't, you know, pastors, youth ministers. I was a youth minister for 8 years, thought that was very important work. So I've been able to find value and worth and create a, you know, kind of see the service opportunity in almost everything that I've done. I don't think I have to be an elected official to make a difference. Yes, sir.
Would you ever support term limits for the Congress and Senate?
You know, I did support term limits. We voted on it my rookie year in Congress, and I tell you, I go back and forth on term limits. I think there's good arguments on both sides. You know, when you, I think any process is bad. I'm not so sure any system is served adequately when someone stays in the system for 30 years. I don't know if the magic number's 6, 12, 18, in politics, I can assure you nothing good comes out of the process if he or she has been there 30 years. You know, Robert Byrd, Strom Thurmond, you know, those guys, I don't care if we agree with them or disagree with them on policy. You know, again, they are good enough to use the rules to protect their deal. And it's just not good. Secondly, matter of fact, they asked Lindsey Graham, was he going to run for the U.S. Senate when Strom Thurmond stepped down. The junior senator from South Carolina had been there 48 years. The senior senator had been there 56 years. They asked Lindsey, was he going to run? He said, you bet, this seat only comes open every 50 years. So the argument against term limits is, or the most effective argument I've heard, is when you look at Congress over the last, I was elected in 1995, left in 2002. 1995 through this last election cycle, 45% of the U.S. House has turned over. So you all have a pretty good way of affecting term limits. And I also have a very difficult time on of saying that if Kay Granger, if you all want Kay Granger to be your representative, it's been 12 years, if it's been 18 years, how do I argue with that? I mean, communities usually have a pretty good feel of who they want to represent them, and they have a pretty good way of dealing with him or her if they say, you've overstepped your boundaries or you've been there too long. So I am, for the most part, supportive of term limits, but I just cannot give you a conclusive answer on, I mean, with deep convictions that it's right or wrong one way or the other. It's just personal opinions, personal feelings that I have having seen the process up close and personal. But the bottom line is you guys have a pretty good way of exercising term limits when you get sick of them and you say, it's time to go. Thank you very much for letting me come.